I've got to be honest, this is exactly the kind of move that can end up surprising a lot of people. Sometimes the biggest off-season stories aren't the ones everyone is talking about every day. They're the under-the-radar additions that quietly show up, put in the work, and suddenly force their way into the conversation. The more I look at this situation, the more it feels like Seattle may have found a player who has a real opportunity to turn some heads once the competition starts heating up. Nothing is guaranteed, but there are definitely reasons for fans to be paying attention to this one. If you're excited to see how this plays out, make sure to leave a like on the video and drop a comment below with "Go Hawks." Let's see how many real Seahawks fans are watching today. The Seattle Seahawks may have quietly pulled off one of the most intriguing moves of the entire offseason, and the surprising part is that it has barely been discussed compared to some of the bigger headlines surrounding the roster. While much of the attention has gone elsewhere, there is one player who continues to generate growing excitement behind the scenes, and the more details that emerge, the more it looks like Seattle identified a prospect they believe has a legitimate chance to become a valuable piece of the team's future. That player is undrafted free agent edge rusher Aiden Huard out of Northwestern. What makes this situation especially interesting is that Huard was not simply another undrafted signing added to fill out the roster. According to information discussed from ESPN's Brady Henderson, Seattle gave Huard the largest guaranteed amount among the team's 7 undrafted free agent signings, with a guarantee worth $267,000. That number does not guarantee a place on the final roster, but it does reveal something important about how the organization viewed him immediately after the draft. When a team aggressively pursues an undrafted player and commits that kind of money compared to the rest of its UDFA class, it is usually a sign that multiple organizations were interested. Henderson noted that there was a strong market for Hurd after the draft, and that several evaluators around the league believed he could have been selected during the draft itself. Seattle ultimately won the battle to bring him in, which is why this move is attracting attention as a potential hidden gem acquisition. The fascinating aspect of Huard's profile is how well his physical traits appear to align with what Seattle wants on the defensive side of the football. Standing 6'4" and weighing 255 pounds, he possesses the size expected from an edge defender while also offering enough athleticism to line up in multiple ways. The discussion surrounding him emphasizes that he is not limited to one role. He can operate as a traditional edge rusher, but there is also the belief that he can stand up and attack from different alignments, depending on the defensive package being used. That versatility becomes even more important when evaluating what he accomplished at Northwestern. The assessment presented in the source material repeatedly points to a player who improved year after year. Instead of relying on a few isolated highlight plays, the evaluation focused on consistency and complete performance. The impression left by his film study was that Huard could contribute in multiple phases of defense rather than excelling in only one area. According to the breakdown, he showed effectiveness against both the run and the pass, making him a more complete edge defender than some prospects entering the league. That balance may ultimately become one of his greatest strengths. Many pass rushers enter the NFL with one clearly defined specialty. Some are explosive pass-rushing threats, but struggle to hold up against the run. Others can defend the edge, but have difficulty generating pressure. The evaluation of Huard suggests he brings elements of both. The belief is that he can set the edge effectively, play with physicality, and still provide pass rush value when asked to attack opposing quarterbacks. His production at Northwestern provides additional reasons for optimism. Despite not playing in what was described as an ideal environment, Huard managed to produce multiple 6-sack seasons and followed that with a 4.5-sack campaign. The argument being made is that these numbers become even more impressive when considering the circumstances around him. Rather than benefiting from overwhelming team strength, He frequently had to create opportunities through his own effort and development. Another factor drawing attention is how his skill set could fit within the defensive vision being implemented in Seattle. The discussion emphasizes that while certain edge defenders are primarily deployed to chase quarterbacks, Horde potentially offers broader flexibility. There is confidence that he can rush the passer, but there is also speculation that he could align in different spots along the defensive front when situations demand it. In smaller defensive packages, there is even discussion of him potentially moving inside, depending on the matchup. The key takeaway from all of this is that Seattle may view him as more than a developmental project. That does not mean he is guaranteed anything. In fact, one of the most important points emphasized throughout the discussion is that the financial commitment does not automatically secure a roster spot. Hurd will still need to earn his place. The organization may believe strongly in his potential, but the expectation remains that performance will determine his future. What is particularly noteworthy is the confidence surrounding his mentality and work ethic. The belief expressed in the source material is that Hurd possesses the type of approach necessary to maximize developmental opportunities. For a player entering the league as an undrafted free agent, that mindset can be every bit as important as physical talent. The challenge is immense, competition is fierce, and every practice rep carries significance. The suggestion is that Seattle sees qualities beyond athletic ability when evaluating his chances. As training camp approaches, the conversation around Hurd is likely to intensify because the Seahawks already have a competitive edge room. Veterans and younger players alike are competing for opportunities, creating a difficult path for any newcomer. Yet that challenge is precisely why Hurd's situation has become so intriguing. If the organization invested more heavily in him than any other undrafted signing, there is clearly a belief that he can compete at a higher level than his draft status would suggest. The story is no longer simply about an undrafted player hoping to survive roster cuts. It is becoming a question of whether Seattle may have uncovered a prospect who slipped through the cracks of the draft process. The combination of his size, versatility, production, and the strong interest he reportedly generated across the league has created a growing sense of anticipation around what comes next. As more practices take place and competition ramps up, every performance from Aiden Hurd will be watched closely. The hype surrounding him continues to build, but the real answers will come once he gets opportunities to prove himself against NFL competition. For now, the evidence available suggests that the Seahawks believe they found something special, and that alone makes him one of the most fascinating under-the-radar players to follow this offseason. What do you think, Seahawks fans? Did Seattle find a future difference maker in Aiden Hurd? Or do you think the competition at edge rusher will ultimately be too difficult for him to earn a spot on the 53-man roster? One of the biggest reasons this story has gained momentum among those following Seattle's offseason closely is because there appears to be a significant gap between how Aiden Hurd was valued by the draft process and how he was valued by NFL evaluators after the draft concluded. According to the information discussed, multiple scouts believed Hurd was worthy of being selected, yet he ultimately entered the league as an undrafted free agent. That immediately creates the possibility that Seattle may have benefited from a market inefficiency, landing a player with draftable traits without having to spend one of its selections. That possibility becomes even more intriguing when examining the way Seattle approached his recruitment. Teams do not hand out the largest guarantee in their undrafted class without a reason. The front office clearly recognized that competition existed for his services and acted aggressively enough to secure his commitment. The guarantee itself may not lock him into a roster spot, but it sends a message about how highly the organization regarded him when compared to the other available undrafted prospects. The next challenge, of course, is figuring out exactly how he can translate that belief into a spot on the active roster. several potential paths have emerged. The first and perhaps most straightforward route is through special teams. For young players fighting for roster positions, special teams often become the fastest way to earn trust. The discussion surrounding Huard suggests that if he can prove useful across multiple special teams units, his value increases dramatically. Coaches love versatility, especially from developmental players. If he can contribute in several phases of special teams while continuing to develop defensively, it becomes much harder to justify removing him from the roster. Another possibility involves Seattle viewing him as too valuable to risk losing. This scenario has precedent within the team's recent roster-building approach. The idea is simple. Even if a young player is not fully ready for a major role, the organization may decide that his long-term upside outweighs the short-term roster inconvenience. In that situation, Seattle could choose to keep him on the 53-man roster rather than expose him to the risk of another team claiming him. The source specifically discussed previous examples of young edge players being retained because the organization believed they would attract interest elsewhere if placed on the practice squad. Then there is the most exciting possibility of all. What if Huard simply forces the issue through his performance? Every offseason, players enter camp buried on depth charts, only to emerge as legitimate contenders. The discussion highlights the possibility that Huard could outperform expectations during off-season activities, mini-camp sessions, training camp practices, and preseason action. If that happens, the conversation shifts entirely. Instead of debating whether he deserves developmental patience, Seattle would be evaluating him based on production and impact. The competition will not be easy. The Seahawks possess established veterans and younger players, all battling for opportunities at edge rusher. That reality means every practice becomes important. Every rep matters. Every preseason snap carries significance. For a player like Huard, there is very little margin for error. At the same time, those competitive environments often reveal who truly belongs. The coaching staff will have every opportunity to evaluate whether the traits that appeared on college film can consistently show up against NFL athletes. What stands out throughout this entire discussion is the repeated emphasis on potential rather than hype alone. The excitement surrounding Huard is not being built solely on athletic measurements or isolated highlights. Instead, it is rooted in a combination of factors: production at Northwestern, physical tools, versatility, reported league-wide interest, and Seattle's willingness to invest more heavily in him than any other member of its undrafted class. When those elements are combined, it becomes easier to understand why some people view him as the most intriguing undrafted player currently entering the Seahawks organization. Still, expectations must remain realistic. The source material repeatedly notes that nobody truly knows how a player will perform until he is placed in football situations that closely resemble game action. Practice drills can be encouraging. Reports can generate excitement. Evaluations can create optimism. But eventually, every prospect must prove it on the field. That moment is what Seahawks fans are now waiting for. The coming months could determine whether Aiden Huard becomes one of the most impressive undrafted success stories of the offseason, or simply another talented prospect fighting through a crowded position group. What makes the story compelling is that there appears to be genuine belief from multiple sources that he has a real chance to exceed expectations. The Seahawks clearly saw enough to pursue him aggressively, and now all attention turns toward whether he can reward that confidence. For now, the excitement remains centered on possibility. A player who reportedly generated significant interest after the draft. A defender with size and versatility. A prospect who consistently improved during his college career, and an organization willing to make a notable financial commitment to secure him. Those are the ingredients that often create some of the most fascinating training camp battles of the year. If Huard manages to contribute on special teams, demonstrates his ability to defend the run, continues to show pass rush value, and proves he belongs against NFL competition, the conversation surrounding him could become much louder very quickly. The opportunity is there. The belief appears to be there. Now comes the difficult part, turning potential into reality. If you enjoyed this update, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to click on the video appearing on your screen right now because the latest Seahawks news and developments are waiting for you there. For Seahawks updates delivered first, this is the place you want to be.